Thank you for coming to this event. I know that you know this is about AI ethics and you innovating responsibly. Now, what does that mean? First questions first. Who knows? When I say this is an event of the London branches community, who knows which London branches we're talking about? Which?
She does.
They have one of those know-it-all people.
North, Central, and South.
Excellent. North, Central, and South. But you may well belong to another branch or group of the BCS. Which branch or group do you belong to?
Financial services.
Financial services. London South. Anybody else belong to any other groups of the BCS?
Business change.
Promise G.
Proms G.
Software practice advancement known as SPA.
SPA, okay. The law group, yeah, right, okay. This is getting to be, yes,
Business change.
business change, excellent. Anybody here not a member of BCS? And proud of it. Well, jolly well get signed up and join them. But admittedly, the BCS is for IT professionals. So think carefully about how you'd classify yourself. If you're an IT professional, or you're a student interested in this, or you are connected to IT in some way, you definitely, I would say, ought to be in the BCS. Now, the BCS consists of many, many groups. Over 100 voluntary groups are in the BCS. But it's not only over 100 voluntary groups, comprising roughly 70,000 members, I believe. It's also another bunch of people. They are people who belong to the Swindon Group. The Swindon Group? Well, that is where BCS headquarters is. And we have an excellent representative of BCS headquarters here with us tonight. He's our speaker. Quite often, these two parts of BCS operate separately. Tonight, I'm really pleased to say that we are operating ethical principles, and we brought John Maskrey, who is a senior digital product developer at BCS. Developer doesn't seem adequate. I'm sure there should be a manager in his title somewhere. But please join me in welcoming John.
Yes, so as Darlene very nicely put it, I'm say part of the Swindon headquarters. I actually live in Leeds, so I'm actually very far away from Swindon. I get to go there now and then, and I recently discovered some nice places to eat. So if you ever go there, I can recommend some places. But yeah, think about that AI ethics and you. Today, what I really want to do is share, I suppose, some of the experiences I have had with my team at BCS, innovating with AI, and some of the journey we've been on, because there's so many sort of takes on what ethics are and what's happening with AI. And what I wanted to bring into this is some of the insight I've gained, and also to hopefully from this as well get some insight from you guys as well, your thoughts, and inspiring you to think about well what can we do to really innovate responsibly, and what does this all mean to us essentially. Now that doesn't work, doesn't matter, we can do that instead, I think. No, we can't do that either. Try that again.
On again.
Hang on, I'm coming.
There we go.
I've managed to make it work somehow. But anyway, thank you. I'm just going to move this ever so slightly. So, yeah. So why am I here? Obviously, I don't need to do any sort of introductions about AI. We're all very aware, particularly over this last year, just what we've seen, what we've felt, and what we're now experiencing. You know, AI is very much cementing itself in our daily lives, in all of the devices in our houses. And for businesses now, it's all about, you know, how can we harness the power of AI? Whilst on the flip side, it's all about that trust. You know, we're more aware more than anything about as consumers about can we trust the products and services we're buying into, what's happening with our data. You know, is it a bot, is it a person, who knows? But fundamentally there's an opportunity to really use AI for good, to solve all these problems that we're seeing, from climate change to how we can automate things to make our lives much more efficient and better, hopefully eradicate lots of manual things we need to do with teams, etc., that I need to do on a daily basis. But part of my role of this last year in particular is, so my role at BCS is I oversee a design team who develop our qualifications and our assessments and our CPD and digital learning content. We had a really great opportunity this year to be part of the new Lord Mayor of London's Ethical AI Connect Prosper initiative. As part of that, he asked us to develop a certification program designed for developers of AI, thinking about how you apply ethical frameworks so that we can build things responsibly for the greater good. I've learned so much from doing that. I've talked to so many great people doing it. What I'm hoping to do today is just share some of the insights from doing that and from some of my past experiences as well. Ethics has been very much ingrained in everything I've done over this past, I'd say, 12 plus years, whether I've been conscious of it or not. But yeah, ultimately, it's how we take. As I mentioned, obviously, businesses at the moment are thinking, you know, how can we harness the capabilities, the opportunities, the benefits of AI? But fundamentally, it's thinking about how we build that trust. I was having a nice conversation with Kitty earlier, and she was talking about, you know, the sophistication of AI now and how it could be used in bad ways, you know, how we can deep fakes and all sorts of things, and really scare people. But when you want to use it for good and when you want to use it with good intentions, well, how do you build the trust? How do people, consumers, ourselves, understand that actually it's safe, it's good, and it's going to do good things for us? Looking ahead, I mean, we're only still on the tip of the iceberg in so many respects from what we've seen in generative AI. Gartner, who are a research company based in America, released a top trends recently about what we're going to see in the next couple of years, from things like augmented development, which we're already seeing, but things like machine customers, which I love that concept. So imagine you've got a self-driving car that can self-diagnose a problem. It can book itself in the garage. It can get itself fixed, and it could be back on your driveway before you know it. And all you need to worry about is having a bank account. It's fascinating, but it shows even more and more we need to be designing these things well and for good. Now, again, this is another bit of research about the Future Jobs Report, suggesting that by 2027 that 43% of work tasks will be automated. I mean, we're already having a lot of those concerns and fears about certain job roles, that are they going to exist anymore, or how is that, what's that balance going to look like? It's you know, there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's also a lot of opportunity. It's how do we tap into those opportunities, and how do we identify what that's going to look like? This shows, you know, why internally our own staff, people we work with, you know, where we need to build their trust, and where we need to inspire them into thinking, you know, well, how can we use AI and what can we do with it? And equally, what could my role look like? And that leads me on to this concept of augmented intelligence. We're appreciating this artificial intelligence and what that delivers. Human intelligence then, so you know, the things that are innate to us in terms of our behaviors, our beliefs, our insight, our experiences. And then that concept of collective intelligence, where we bring it together, and where we have cultures of people and organizations, and how we combine that all together to make things work. AI is permeating and it's influencing all these different types of roles. And if we imagine any role being supported by an AI assistant or a buddy, it starts to get you think about, well, what's that level of digital skills that anyone is going to need? and what are the roles that we're going to require to deliver that? What will the software developer look like, etc. Now, just thinking on, and I'm covering some ground here, but then I want to get into some of the, I suppose, some of the further insight that we've gained and share a bit of an example of our own sort of things that we've been developing, shall we say. Thinking on what we need to innovate responsibly. These are some of the key components, I guess. Think about if you're an organization or a business, whether you're a small, medium enterprise to a large organization, there's these things that you can ask yourself and that you can take a look at that can give you that grounding around, do we have the right sort of environment, so to speak, to innovate responsibly and to implement AI to deliver good results, in effect. I added some of those questions on there, what we must comply with by law, do we have the right policies, procedures, technology, etc. But at the heart of it, and this is obviously very key, is our people, that concept of professionalism, which I'll talk a little more about in a moment. Who's familiar with the EU AI Act, or at least heard of it? EU.
Never heard of it.
Well, if you didn't know, obviously, recently the EU AI Act passed, and the whole intention of that is to set out, to start to set out legal accountability, shall we say, for the use of AI, to provide a framework in which people can identify the level of risk associated with the type of AI they're going to work with, and then to set out some guardrails and some rules in effect. It takes very much a pro-innovation approach, which is good. And at the same time, we don't know what AI is going to look like in the next 5 years. So at the same time, the groundwork for it is enough that it's flexed, or there's other things that can supplement it. But in effect, it sets out the sort of hierarchy of where your use of or the AI that you're working on, where that might sit in that scale. It can range from minimal or no risk, we don't really need to worry about it, up to prohibited. So there'll be some uses like things that are involved in social profiling, for instance, that are often a no-no. We will find most uses of AI will sit within the high-risk category, and in some respects that's a good thing. Whether it's using it for education or travel or healthcare, a lot of these things will have an impact on people, and that's why we take it seriously and why we need to consider these as high risk. Doesn't mean you can't go there and you shouldn't go there, and to scare off and for organizations to think, no, we shouldn't use AI. It's more to set out a set of principles and guardrails so that you can do it well, in effect. I've taken some of the core components out of the EU regulatory framework, and this is just to illustrate some of those key components and things that suggest that you should ensure that you have in place. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the risk assessment. I don't need to go into that in any sense of the word, but we know that's key in understanding what are the potential risks and how we might mitigate them, to understanding the data sets that we're using and how we do our system setup. Does that allow for that traceability, etc. One of the key components of this, though, is that human oversight. So to make it all work well, we know that we need to maintain that human oversight and that role to ensure all of those elements around it exist and can be suitable to work with high-risk AI. Just a quick question: has anyone recently implemented a use of AI or previous experience? Yes.
It's just a small, just tutorials through like Amazon, making like rags.
Yeah.
Actual data sets that were given to me, but nothing too major.
Yeah. And what inspired that use? Was it just grabbing an opportunity?
Yeah, grabbing an opportunity literally and just giving it a go.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
I use natural language processing to generate an application, a working software, just using the GPT code interpreter, and it was scarily great. Scarily good. I was so impressed.
Has anyone built a service around using AI, or is that? Yeah.
It's an architecture for designing and delivering conversational AI.
Yeah, well, we might come back to some of those examples. That wanted me to move on. We've talked a little about the regulation, but obviously the ethics and highlight here. Ethics can mean different things to. Yeah.
John, would you mind speaking a bit louder?
Oh, sorry. Yes, can do. Okay, so that leads me on to ethics, which people think about ethics in different ways. You know, it's the things that guide us in terms of understanding what's right and what's wrong. Well, underpinning our ethics are usually those values that we have, those shared experiences or those individual experiences. And when we think about ethics and their role in implementing AI, it's always good to consider those at an individual level and what people's ethics are, but also at an organizational level and how we apply ethics in the design and development and delivery of AI solutions. Now, obviously, the thinking about the things that can threaten our ethical behavior, our actions, and our moral judgment, it's useful to understand the things that can influence people, whether that's yourself or your team. It can be things from self-interest to needing to meet a hard deadline and the pressures of that, and whether that influences people to either miss things out or not have that full review that they should do. I know from lessons learned myself, a product developer in the past, there's always that sort of risk when you need to get something out and how we can iterate and do things iteratively and get things out to market on time, so to speak. If we're working with AI, there is a certain level here of, making sure we're aware of the things that could threaten the people working in those teams, and how we ensure those sort of standards, I guess. I've listed some of those things that can support in some respects. We've got our professional standards, we've got our BCS code of conduct, and there's that sort of sharing of best practice and experiences. I won't go into this too much because I'm conscious of time, but I think it's useful to illustrate the individual ethics. And then moving more towards how we consider and apply ethical principles in a shared sense when designing and developing AI. There are the AI UK principles. Another set of principles that I always found really useful is Floridian Cowell's principles. Has anyone seen these principles before and familiar and want to give me their take on what we mean by beneficence? A word that I couldn't say until about 6 months ago.
Well, delivering, doing good, but good's a relative term, right?
Yeah. For the benefit, I guess, of beneficence. So essentially what these principles really mean are we should never think about ethics being something that we do later down the line. We need to embed it very much in design, and we need to embed it very much in that upfront thinking. And what these principles really try to set out is to enable us to ask the right questions before we start to do anything. So beneficence then is our intended use, or the idea that we have for using this AI to benefit people. If it isn't, well, it's not a good use case. Non-maleficence then, so is there any harm intended by it, or reducing harm, etc.? Will it enable autonomy of the user? Will it treat people fairly in terms of justice? Is it going to be fair to our users? And explicability then, can we actually explain how it can be used? There's a whole sort of thought process. There's various frameworks that are based on these that you can apply when working through that design process, that allow you to ask these questions, that allow you to evidence these things. It's really important that you can think about these in a very practical sense. The UK principles, of course, these were set out not long after the big sort of explosion of the generative AI. And again, these are to set key questions and to start to set out some guardrails that organizations can use when developing AI. What's quite interesting is when I look to these, I want to come back to, I suppose, my interpretation and my experiences of using this. it's all fair and well talking about these terms, and it'd be really good to ensure that things are safe and transparent. But what does that really mean? Well, as a product developer, in my sense, I've always thought about, well, how do I inspire the team that I work with? Because you can talk about doing things in the right way, whistleblow, etc. But again, thinking back to individuals, everyone has a different interpretation of what's right and wrong. Everyone has a different experience or worldview. So how do we harness that and bring that into something that as a team who might be working with AI can have a shared view? Something that we did as a team, we set out our design standards, which is effectively set 6 principles, each with a set of 5 standards. And we did that as a bit of an exercise across, and we interpreted that into a narrative that we all understood. These statements seem quite generic. We put our customers at the heart of our design process, etc. But underneath those, we put our descriptors about, well, actually, how are we going to do that? And the things that we do and the tools that we use, how are we going to use those to meet these standards, these principles? And what it did, and what I hoped it would achieve, would be to inspire the team to think about, well, how do we do this well? And how do we take pride in what we do? And how do we feel a sense that what we're doing really matters? Because I think, again, if we're thinking about getting people to kind of do things in the right way, I suppose, and innovate responsibly, it's all about inspiring them to care. Having a set of principles and things, and a narrative and a vision that people buy into, I think is so fundamentally important, because otherwise you can question, well, why are we doing this? So within this, we very much sort of embedded some of those ethical principles, whether we were aware of it or not, around how we'll ensure that it delivers the benefits to the intended users, and how we will make it fair and inclusive, etc. I'm just going to move on to the other arms of this real quickly, and then I'll get to the funner bit, hopefully. So I hope this is fun anyway. The other element then is governance. So we've thought about the regulation, we've thought about ethics. How do we then really translate that into our governance? So our policies, our processes, and the roles that we have. Policies and processes are one thing, and sometimes there's generic processes and policies that we lift and we apply. But if we can bring in that sense of values, that sense of ethics, understanding the regulation, and again interpret those into our governance so people can understand them and relate to them, there's more chance that you can create something that's going to enable AI to be delivered sustainably. There have since been some AI standards developed here. I've just listed some here. I attended a really interesting talk recently which showed the relationship between the UK AI principles and the standards, and how they align and how they enable you to demonstrate and meet some of those principles. Yeah, for anyone interested or who's not encountered any of these before, they're useful if you're looking to set up a whole system using AI. And then just to finish off the key components, I've also got technical infrastructure then. So we have capable, reliable, secure, sustainable, traceable systems. So we know that having a system is one thing, but without the right people and the processes, and then having those systems designed to really meet those needs, and then having the right set in place, how decisions are being made, where data is coming from, it all needs to knit and fit together. And that leads me on to then the people. So the people at the heart of this. You all work in technology and IT. And I really hope some of these statements connect with you. Fundamentally, our role to enable AI to be delivered for the good is to ensure that we have the right level of competency, either technically or level of ethics, or that we have accountability for what we do, and very importantly, that we have an inclusive workforce and team developing these things. We think about the risk of bias creeping into data sets, or systems being designed for some users, not other, having those different perspectives, those worldviews, come into the pot, shall we say, when developing is fundamental. Anyway. And then finally, just thinking about those influences and things, going a bit wider then, if we think about those factors of influence, we've thought a lot on the internal. And if we think about attaining that augmented intelligence, there are lots of other things that can influence and lead us to make decisions, or as an organization, make decisions to either go or no go when it comes to utilizing AI. And you know, there's so many things that can impact if we don't do these things well. So understanding the pace of innovation, what's happening with our competitors, what are those opportunities. But on the flip side, if we implement a whole system of a new system, do we have the right level of digital skills, you know, internally, and also what could be the impact on our users? So yeah, there's a whole set of things to think about. So it's just going to lead me on to our own explorations. So as I said at the start, I work in our sort of learning and development side of BCS, part of the product we were developing, certification program, we identified the opportunity to try a bit of generative AI ourselves. Dip our toe in, like you did. You know, let's give it a go. I think some people at first a little bit apprehensive because we're talking about using it in assessment. However, we're talking about formative assessment, not high stakes. But we have a partner, Tintisha Technologies, and timings collided nicely. They were working on an idea for a plugin and built some element of it. We had an idea of what we wanted to do, and we gave it a go, basically. So I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of it. Now, in our online course, we have a set of modules, and every now and then we wanted to introduce a scenario. So providing a real world example, and rather than just do your typical knowledge check or test, where the concept of ethics is in some respects quite holistic, and we wanted to be able to enable people to apply their thinking to real world examples and get some meaningful feedback. We developed automated feedback and marking using generative AI. Now, here's an example of a typical scenario. So talking about use of AI in the police force, and we've proposed the questions here. You know, consider 2 ethical concerns that unique considerations for using this type of system, and just giving an illustrative example there, I might provide a reasonable answer here about historical crime data, and the influence that might have, or the concern we might have, how it might behave in that respect. Another one, a large gorilla with laser eyes destroying the city. I mean, it could happen, possibly not in this situation, but you never know. And once I answer the question, that passes over and I get feedback from the AI. We had to really play with this, and I'll go into this a little bit more, but it's quite rightly given me 1 mark. It's identified that one of my answers was not relevant. It's given me some ideas on how I could improve my answer. So it's not bad, it's quite reasonable. I do want to point out right now as well, this is for self-paced online learning, someone doing it in their own time. So we didn't really have the feasibility to have a human marker there all the time to provide feedback. We were not using this in the actual final assessment. It's very much there to inspire someone to provide their thoughts and get some sort of meaningful feedback. But we also built it into the course because we also want to get feedback from people and tell us how good or how bad it might be. We did build in some features, so allowing the user to provide their comments. So I've said this isn't too bad, I quite like it. I might totally disagree with the feedback, and I can also rate it as well. And the good thing with this, if we're thinking about human oversight, obviously we could talk about how the system works, we could trace how a decision is made. One of the things that we thought was really important was, well, how do we generate and get immediate feedback from the users so we can monitor how effective it is actually being. So having that mix of quantitative and qualitative data being generated as it's in use has actually been really, really important to us. It's allowed us to identify exactly where we've found common patterns in behaviors and actually where we might need to adjust our prompt behind the scenes a little bit. It's identified that actually, you know what, maybe we suck a little bit at writing questions. We might need to improve it a little bit. And equally that people take to things in different ways. That's very positive feedback. And we've had others where maybe they, you know, some people like to think, I know everything and, you know, you can't tell me anything else. And fair enough. You can never please everyone. But generally, we did find that overall, the scoring we got out of a pilot of about 100 people initially, it was averaging around 4 stars. So I see that as a good gauge that actually we're on the right tracks here. It wasn't always the case though. An earlier example where we were playing and we were toying with it. Here's an example where again, I put a daft answer, Jim Carrey might attack us with his oversized gin. It actually commended me for that answer. Well, actually, it did call out that I'd put a stupid answer and told me up a little bit. It gave me 2 marks. So it obviously got a bit confused, told me off, but it's also rewarded me at the same time. So that got us thinking and exploring a little bit more. And what it sort of boiled down to was our marking criteria. So the AI behind the scenes, it has certain prompts for, you know, how to return the marks and format, etc. But also it uses a mark scheme. And one of the things that we hadn't done initially, which wouldn't usually do actually, was determine, well, what is a 0 mark? When you're assessing and marking things, yes, you might say, well, here's a 1 mark, here's a 2 mark, but actually don't award any marks at all. It's usually common sense, isn't it? They've just either not answered the question at all, or they've just put ridiculous answers and nonsense. So we basically had to tell the AI to, you know, give no marks for really stupid answers, basically. So, and as soon as we started doing that, we saw it kick into gear. It was interesting, just that experimentation, and this is where that, you know, that user testing comes in hugely. Seeing how it performs, how it lands with different responses, making those tweaks, all in a safe environment before you take it further. Well, yeah, it's quite addictive as well, is the other thing. But anyway. But just to give you, I suppose, an overall overview of our approach. So like yourselves, we identified an opportunity. Let's try some of this. Let's be a bit ambitious. We looked at our suppliers. We had a supplier to hand who could help us develop something. We did our due diligence, our risk assessment, etc. And we pulled that all into a use case. That was very much about creating that narrative and understanding, well, who is this for? What's the benefit? What are the potential risks? How are we going to do this? How are we going to mitigate against some of those risks? And how are we going to test it and pilot it, basically? I went through then those other stages. So doing that full design and testing and pen testing. We took it to review. We then did that sort of internal training, so our teams understood it. And then took it to pilot. The program's now since gone live, and we now have actual learners on and trialing it, and we're still maintaining that oversight to see how it fares and trying to improve it as well. The plugin was based on ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, which obviously is very antiquated now. If you think about, what is it now? 4.0. And if anyone's seen some of ChatGPT now, it's insane how more advanced it's got just, you know, in the last 5 months, basically, since we were sort of toying with some of this stuff. So yeah, it just shows that constant need to keep updating and lessons learned, etc. Yeah, it's a bit sales pitchy, but no, if anyone is interested, we do have our BCS Foundation certificate in ethical build of AI. The key features here, if you want to find out more, QR code. Happy to explain more about it. Like I said, we've developed it very much for individuals, but also for teams. Within it is practical frameworks and ideas on how you can embed it into your processes, but gaining a professional certification. And also for the BCS members, through my BCS now, I don't know if people have seen Discover, which is that sort of searchable CPD interface and hub. There are other various things available within there. There is also a free CPD module, the Ethical IT Professional, that's available for any members to access and sign up. If you feel the interest, check it out. Yeah, and then I think that's me really. So yeah, if you want to connect, I'm available in LinkedIn format as well. So yeah, I hope that's been useful.